boss became the boss because at some point he stopped being the guy you were like worried about, and he started being the guy who people were like guided by. It was like a kind of North Star for all of these other skaters. And I don't know exactly how it happened, but I do think it was after Stay Gold, after that kickflip, after using a song that, God, I would never want to hear that song in my life. What is it? Om Nathi Me. No thanks. Gibberish lyrics, no spirituality, like not my shit. However, if you can rescue that song, you have achieved something. So I think there was a kind of like stunned, holy shit, like what has this guy accomplished? Let's try to countenance some of that. The kind of writing that I wanted to do required that I had to believe that that sort of writing didn't exist in the world. And I'm speaking of this as a thing I've grown out of. But my guess is I came out swinging pretty hard. Like, hear ye, check me out, this is gonna be sick. What ended up being the opening, which was about arguments. Here's a guy who seems somehow to transcend the basic currency of skateboard conversation, which is arguing, which is taste. I don't know anyone who would say that the frontside flip still isn't Andrew Reynolds' trick. We could have said the impossible was always Ed Templeton's, then Dylan Reeder came along. The fact is, Reynolds' frontside flip somehow escapes the standard back and forth, tit for tat, irreconcilable differences that all skaters have about style and taste. So it started there. It started with like, hey, we're assholes, and yet here's one thing we agree with. Basically everything I wrote for Jenkem, when I look back now, was trying to show skaters they were more thoughtful than they are. Minor has a lot to do with that, right? The way that part was edited, the sort of opening 16 millimeter footage of him in the backyard with Stella. Part of it is what we saw, and part of it is what we knew from before it, right? And this is where that narrative thread comes into it. He obviously was not in the same place he was in 5 years earlier. He was obviously not in the place he was in 10 years earlier. Part of it is just basic reality of the human compulsion toward narrative, which is understanding how characters change. We knew he was sober. Sobriety had a lot to do with it. He also seemed to have like pared his wardrobe down to one green shirt that said Florida across it and like standard fitting jeans. Part of it was also what we knew about behavior, but then also fashion. There was just this sort of stripping away of all of the extras of the Baker bootleg era of leather and buckles and all of this stuff I couldn't imagine ever skateboarding in. Suddenly now he's like focused in a different way. My exposure to America was largely about admiring John Miner, a skate video maker who had his own aesthetic. This is all to say that when I sat down to watch Stay Gold, I was ready for anything. For such an established company, I came in pretty open to it. By that closing section, it was one of those times where you feel emotional. Like I felt moved by skateboarding. I felt like I've not wasted my life. Put this in the column of arguments for why you have not wasted 30 years of your life doing this thing. That's, I think, something a lot of us, especially as we age, start feeling less and less. When it does happen, you feel this immense gratitude. Maybe that's the other thing to add to the Reynolds thing. Like, I felt gratitude by the time I started writing. I wanted to be like, God, thank you for this. What have you done?